Hey guys, Joshua Griffin here, serving the Middle Peninsula and the Northern Neck of Virginia. I wanted to do a video talking about the Honeywell programming and some of the definitions of some of the verbiage that they use in there. I personally think that if you don't know how to install a thermostat, or you don't know what the wires mean or any of that, hire a professional. The couple bucks that you're going to have to pay somebody to get them to install it is going to save you so much headache and avoid a lot of issues that could happen if you install something wrong or if you accidentally short something and so on. So that's, first of all, hire a pro. But with that said, hire us if you're in our coverage area. But with that said, I wanted to go through the manual and some of the verbiage and what it means and things like that, because I think that you as a homeowner, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you're a homeowner, you're thinking about replacing your thermostat, or you are, or whatever, or you're just adjusting some of the settings and how it was programmed. And that's really what the goal of this video is to just go through some of the verbiage, some of the definitions, and that way you know what it means, because I don't know that the manual is very clear. If you're not in the trade, you may not know what some of this means. So I'm going to go through it real quick. I've got just a standard manual here. I'm not going to go through any of the advanced settings. I'm not going to go through any fancy stuff. I'm going to go through the normal stuff, the stuff that you got to get it straight for your thermostat to work correctly. So I've got just a standard manual here. I'm going to go through that, and hopefully it helps. So the manual I've got here is for a T6 Honeywell. We install mostly Honeywell thermostats, Honeywell or Daikin, and I'm sure there are other brands out there. I'm sure there's other heat and air companies that like another brand for a particular reason. We've just had a lot of good success with the Honeywell line, reliability and things like that. And I can't say that about all the brands that we've tried. With that said, some of the verbiage may be different for a different brand, or it may be the same. I don't know, but that's something, again, if you're not sure what you're doing, you definitely want to call a pro. Because, when you start talking about, we're going to go through a few things here, but let's say you're talking about multi-stage units or something like that. I've noticed that different brands treat that differently. So one brand might call the same exact system, they may call it, say, a 2 heat 1 cool, whereas this brand over here might call it something totally different with the stages, because of whether it's a heat pump and it has a reversing valve, or just whatever. I've noticed that with some of the brands. So with Honeywell, so I'm going to stick with the way Honeywell does it, and that's what makes sense to us, and that's what we install the most of, other than our Daikin High Seer stuff, and which has to get a Daikin thermostat, and all of that. So let's go through some of this. The first option, when you go into the programming for this thermostat, you definitely want to have the manual in your hands or on your phone or whatever, because it's usually, if you're programming one of these thermostats and it's just got the numbers flashing up, you don't know what the numbers are, and it may not, unless you got the manual in your hands, you may not know what that means, what those numbers mean. So the first option that this manual gives us it says scheduling options, and it gives us 4 options: non-programmable, 5-2 programmable, 5-1-1 programmable, and then 7-day programmable. What do each one of those mean? Because, again, with some other brands, if you say non-programmable, which is what our first option is, that means something totally different than what Honeywell calls non-programmable in this particular situation. It means that it's not digital, or it's not, there's no way to change the functions of it, and it's a non-programmable thermostat. But this is talking about your scheduling, meaning if you ran a schedule in that thermostat, turn on at this particular time in the day, turn off this time, that sort of thing. And so the first option, non-programmable, you're going to turn it to that. If you don't plan to run a schedule, you don't want to have to click the hold button, and you don't want to have to fool with any of that. So I have customers that, we'll do that for. We don't put a program in it, and they don't even want it popping up, because it screws them up, and they get confused and all that. The next two are pretty simple. So 5.2 and 5.1.1, that's referring to your weekdays and weekend. So 5.2 just means all your weekdays would be on one schedule, and all your weekend would be on a separate schedule. 5.1.1 would be weekdays, and then Saturday, and then Sunday. And you being able to run a different schedule for each of those. And then finally, of course, 7-day programmable. That's where you can run a different schedule each day of the week. Pretty simple. The next one, temperature indication scale, Fahrenheit or Celsius. In America, we usually use Fahrenheit. Down here where it says system types. Now this is where, if you don't know what type of system you have, you need to hire a pro. You need to know what kind of system you have anyway, in my opinion. We try to educate our customers, and so they know what exactly they have, the pros and cons of that particular system. Some systems have good and bad things about them. And so what you have in your home may not be listed on this list, believe it or not. Now, I think in most cases it will be, but if you had some form of heat that's not listed here, you want to understand how each one of these systems operate, so that way you can set up this thermostat to run the way your system needs it to run. I'll give you a good example. If you have a heat pump system with electric backup, not a dual fuel, well, that is going to, if you tell the thermostat to operate that way, that thermostat itself is going to control the fan when it wants it to turn on and off and all that good stuff. But in contrast, there are gas heat, furnaces, oil heat, all kinds of different forced air furnaces, but they burn some sort of fuel. They do not want the thermostat to control the fan. You're going to get a lot of cold air being pumped out at times if it does. And in a lot of cases, those sorts of systems, they control the fan, the indoor fan motor themselves. So just keep that in mind. This list of things they've got listed here: conventional forced air heat, heat pump, radiant heat, none, cool only. It goes through so many different options. I'm not going to go into each one of those options unless you comment on this video and say you want me to. I'll do a whole separate video for that. But I don't think that's really necessary. I just think ultimately you need to know what kind of system you have. And if it's not listed, understanding what that system needs, and that will play a role in which one of these options you select, okay? The next one, it says reversing valve O or B. During the making of this video, that this may change in the future, but during the making of this video, a heat pump has a reversing valve in there that will switch from heat to cool. And what happens is, with some brands, that coil on that reversing valve needs to be energized in one stage or the other. So I would go so far as to say 85, if not 90% of the brands that are out there, they're going to engage that reversing valve in the cooling stage. O is what it would call it. And that O is what it refers to in the Honeywell manual, and that's what that means. So if you have a Train, Carrier, Goodman, Daikin, Amana, I mean, there's so many brands that use O as their Bryant, all the ICP brands, they all use O. So Night and Day, Heil, all those brands, they're going to use the O. Okay. Again, during the making of this video, I only know on maybe a handful of brands that use the reversing valve they energize in heating mode, and they call that B. Okay. So if you're replacing an old thermostat, and let's say that was a Train thermostat, the B on that Train does not mean the B on this that it means to a Honeywell thermostat. Okay, they mean two totally different things. I'm not going to get into all that on this video because, again, you should be hiring a pro. But that B on that old Train thermostat does not go to this B terminal on this Honeywell. If you do that, you are not going to have air conditioning that night. You're going to short something. So, the brands that do use B, just off the cuff, ones that I can think of right now, Rheem and Rude both do. They're both the same manufacturer. I believe the new Fujitsu split systems are being made by Rheem. I haven't installed one. I don't plan to, but I'm sure if they're being manufactured by Rheem, chances are they might be energized in B. I don't know that for sure. A couple other brands, some of the Midea brands that are made in China, Bosch, the old Ameristars. I think the new Ameristars are going to be made right back in the Ingersoll Rand factories during the making of this video. That's what I've heard recently. So it's really only a handful of brands, really, that use B as their reversing valve. If you're not sure, again, hire a pro. It's not hard for us to figure out what needs to be done with that. But if you don't know what you're doing, again, you could really, you could mess your system up. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to get in all the stages. There's cool stages, heat stages. Again, different brands do it different ways. Honeywell, like if you have just a standard electric heat pump system, you're going to be looking at a 2 heat 1 cool because it counts that first stage of heat as the heat pump itself, and then the second stage would be your electric backup. These things change as far as if you have a dual fuel system or a multi-stage compressor or things like that, and it can be a little confusing. So again, if you're not sure, hire a pro. Just go through a couple other things here. Let's see. If you do have a dual fuel system and it asks you if you have an external fossil fuel kit, chances are you should be using a thermostat that controls the dual fuel capabilities. In the old days, we would install these whole separate kits that itself would do the dual fuel systems, meaning if it got below a certain temperature outside, it would bring on the backup heat versus trying to run that heat pump. These days, the thermostats have an outdoor temperature sensor, and they can control that themselves. You don't even need that whole extra kit, which back then was pretty pricey at times. Let's see. So system changeover. This is one of my favorite functions that Honeywell is making. It's not an upgrade anymore. It's coming standard on a lot of their even lower end thermostats. They're putting system changeover valves on there. What is that? I did a whole video on this, basically talking about the advantages of doing this. If you live somewhere like we do, where there are days, it's not a lot of them, but every spring, every fall, we have days in Virginia that you will have heat come on at night, AC come on during the day. It's kind of warm during the day, kind of cool at night. And so you feel like you're constantly fighting it, changing it from heat to cool and all that on your mode. This allows you to set a temperature range, okay? And if it gets above that range, the AC will come in. And if it gets below that range, the heat will turn on. And so I love it. I always turn it on for my own thermostats, and I turn it on for a lot of our customers, unless they don't want anything fancy, which is sometimes reasonable to request. You just want it to be a couple switches, couple functions, and you're not really looking to have all these bells and whistles. And with this particular model, when you turn that on, the next one says auto changeover differential. All that's saying is, what's that range going to be? Usually I think factory is typically 3, it says 0 here, but if you turn it on, I think 3 is usually what's going to be your range. I don't usually change that. 3's reasonable. But there may be situations where you may want a 5-degree range, or you might not care about your utility bill at all, and you might only have 1 or 2 degree range. So, you set a temperature and it stays at that temperature, whether it's got to bring on heat or AC. Okay. The next option in this thermostat manual that I absolutely love, it's one of my favorite functions that they ever came out with, and because it saves energy, and that is your backup heat droop. We always turn this on. If it's a heat pump of any kind, I don't care if it's dual fuel, regular electric, whatever, I'm turning this on. And essentially what it is, the old Honeywell 3000s, a lot of the older thermostats, they would already have this sort of built-in heat droop. That's what they call it. And essentially what that was if the temperature in the room dropped 2 degrees less than what the set temperature was, it would bring on the backup heat, okay? Why does that matter? Well, your backup heat in a lot of cases isn't as efficient as that first stage, okay? And so you can set that for whatever you want. We usually just set it for 2. So if you get that 2, then it's going to bring that on. It's going to bring on your backup heat, okay? The next one is your upstage timer for the backup heat. I love this. And what this is it's a timer for that backup heat. Meaning let's say you set the last one for 2, let's say it dropped down to 3 degrees. So you got a 2-degree heat droop, and you got it set for this temperature, and it drops below your, whatever that heat droop temperature is. And it says, hey, we're ready to bring on the backup heat. This timer is going to delay that for whatever time you set it for. We usually just do 30 minutes, but that can save you so much energy. Why? Because let's say you get off of work, house is a little chilly, you walk in, you turn the heat up, okay? You're ready for it to get nice and toasty in there. And what it's going to do is, if there's that 2-degree difference and you don't have a timer, you turn that heat up higher than 2 degrees, what that room temperature is, that backup heat is going to come on almost instantly and start drawing energy. I remember in the old days, I used to work at a place that they would never turn the temperature up or down more than a degree, because they were so scared of other stages of heat coming on. And so I always thought that was funny. If it was 60 degrees in that room, they would do 61, and then when it reached that, they go 62, and it was funny. But this timer is going to give that heat pump a chance, okay? If you set it for 30 minutes, it's going to give that heat pump 30 minutes. So if you get a mild day like we do in Virginia, where, the heat might come on, but you don't need full bear blasting heat. You just need something to knock the chill off. Something that's, more efficient. Something, I don't think that every day is created equal, and a cold January winter day, when you got that heat pumping, you don't necessarily need that, on an April morning and you're just trying to knock the chill off, okay? So that timer is going to give it a chance. It's going to save you energy, because if that heat pump can reach temperature, your backup heat won't ever have to come on. Compressor lockout, I've seen this verbiage. I'm not going to get into all this. Outdoor lockout, compressor lockout, and all that. That's something you need to hire a pro for. That's functions that you might use if you are going to do a dual fuel or something like that. I'm also not going to get into cycle rates. I usually don't change them anyway. They're set. Honeywell sets them for us from the factory, depending on what type of system you tell it that you have. And in some models, they don't even let you change that. But if it does allow you to, be careful messing with all of that. You could be really, throwing your thermostat out of whack there. Just got a few more things. Compressor protection. I've seen other verbiage used for this. But basically it might say, protection or whatever, compressor timer or whatever. And what basically what that is whatever you set that for, it's going to have a delay, and the goal is so you don't ever have any sudden off and ons with the compressor, which can happen if you don't have any sort of protection timer on there. You remember the old thermostats that kind of had the levers, right? And the little mercury bubbles floating around inside. Those had no delay. So that system I remember seeing systems in the old days. We would see systems that would turn on and they'd run for about 10 seconds and they'd turn off. And then 2 seconds later, back on again. That is so hard on your compressor. And your electric bill is going to be loving you as well. This is going to eliminate that. It's going to turn off. Refrigerant's going to equalize. And then when it's time, that system will turn back on. Adaptive intelligent recovery. This is just a fancy word that they basically throw in there. Essentially what that is, it even has a little note here. It says adaptive intelligent recovery is a comfort setting. Heating or cooling equipment will turn on earlier, ensuring the indoor temperature will match the set point of your scheduled time. So essentially, and it's actually really cool technology. They've been doing it for a number of years. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to learn your house, and it's going to say, okay, it takes me 20 minutes to reach temperature whenever they have a set point that day. And so it's going to just turn on 20 minutes earlier. That's essentially all that means. So like if you have it set to be at 72 when you get home from work at 5 o'clock, okay, then it's going to come on at 20 minutes to 5 and bring that house up, if that's what you have it set at, okay? Minimum and maximum set points. I always change these. I'm not going to get into what maybe what you need to set it at. I don't personally think there's any reason for a thermostat to be set ridiculously higher than the room temperature or ridiculously lower. Most systems, depending on what type of system you have, most systems, they're not going to operate differently anyway if there's a 2-degree difference or a 20-degree difference. So in the short term anyway. Now, if there's a 20-degree difference from, what the temperature in the room is and what you have it set at, it's going to keep running until it reaches that 20 degrees or just continues to run anyway. But because of that, I mean, especially if you have kids in the house, let's say one of them's fooling around and they change the temperature, they can't mess up your house but so much if you're setting those set points for them. Last few things, there are some reminders you can put in there. There's some other settings here too, but I'm not going to get into those. They're things that you should be hiring a pro for. But your air filters and your UV lights and all these other different types of reminders, essentially they're just timers, and you can change. So if you have a 2-year UV light versus a 1-year, you can change, make the necessary timer changes. If you have a specific type of filter, one that can last an entire year versus one that only lasts 30 days, you can make those changes. And so on. Backlighting, all that is, that's just the light on the thermostat. The display, when it lights up and you can see it, you can actually turn that on to stay on continuously. Most folks don't want that. They just want it on demand. You don't need it lighting up your entire house in the middle of the night. So yeah, I hope this video helped. If you are installing a Honeywell thermostat, got any comments, put them down in the comment section. And if you need any heating and air or plumbing work done in the Northern Necker or Middle Peninsula area of Virginia, give us a call. Our phone number is right there. 5050-AIR, 804-505-0247. Or you can go to our website. I'm always putting new stuff on there. Trying to be better and better about that. Information that's for you. And all that. And then finally, if you're just a listener on YouTube and you are checking this video out because of whatever reason, I'm personally do most of our videos, and I'm always trying to do informative stuff. So please subscribe. Thank you.